Have you ever felt invisible? Like your true potential, your deepest worth, was hidden beneath layers of circumstance, overlooked by a world too busy to truly see? This is the story of Elias, a man who understood invisibility better than most. He spent his days in the hushed, sterile corridors of the city's most prestigious hospital, a ghost in a blue uniform, pushing a cleaning cart, mopping floors, and emptying bins. Elias was a cleaner, a silent, diligent presence, his life a monochrome canvas against the vibrant, often chaotic, backdrop of saving lives. But beneath that unassuming exterior, behind eyes that had seen too much sorrow and too little recognition, lay a mind as sharp as any surgeon's scalpel and a heart as empathetic as any nurse's. His past was a tapestry woven with threads of hardship and quiet resilience. Born into poverty, he'd been forced to leave school early to support his ailing mother, sacrificing his own dreams of higher education. He devoured books in stolen moments, educating himself in the vast, unofficial university of life. He'd seen human suffering up close, not from a clinical distance, but from the raw, visceral perspective of someone who understood what it meant to struggle for survival. He knew the silent language of fear in a patient's eyes, the unspoken grief of a family member, the hidden anxieties of overworked medical staff. He'd perfected the art of observation, noticing details others missed, not because he was looking for them, but because he was simply present, truly present, in a way few others were. His uniform, a symbol of his low status, was also his cloak of invisibility, allowing him to move through the hospital's intricate ecosystem unseen, unheard, yet absorbing everything. He was the quiet observer, the silent witness to triumphs and tragedies, a forgotten cog in the grand machine of healing. Elias carried a quiet dignity, a humble strength that belied his humble profession. He treated every floor he mopped, every surface he disinfected, with a meticulous care that bordered on reverence. For him, cleanliness wasn't just a job. It was a small act of kindness, a way to bring order to chaos, a silent contribution to the healing environment. He believed that even the smallest task, performed with dedication and heart, held its own profound significance. He saw the hospital not just as a workplace, but as a sanctuary, a place where hope and despair intertwined daily. He knew the rhythms of the place better than most, the shift changes, the emergency alarms, the hushed consultations, the joyous cries of new life, the mournful silence of loss. He was a part of it, yet apart from it, a paradox of presence and absence. His existence was a testament to the countless unsung heroes who keep the world running, their contributions often overlooked, their worth undervalued. Elias was one of them, a man of profound depth hidden in plain sight, waiting for the moment when the world would finally see beyond the uniform and recognize the extraordinary spirit within. His story begins not with a bang, but with the quiet swish of a mop, a subtle shift in the hospital's familiar rhythm, a faint whisper of change carried on the sterile air. Dr. Eleanor Vance, the hospital's chief of surgery, was a woman forged in the crucible of ambition and brilliance. She was a whirlwind of controlled energy, her days a relentless pursuit of medical excellence, her nights often spent poring over research papers or preparing for complex surgeries. Her reputation preceded her sharp, uncompromising, a visionary in her field. But beneath the veneer of steely professionalism, Eleanor was also deeply burdened. The hospital, her sanctuary and her battleground, was facing a crisis. Not a medical one, but a systemic one. Staff morale was at an all-time low. The once vibrant atmosphere of collaboration and shared purpose had given way to a palpable tension, a simmering resentment that permeated every department. Doctors were exhausted, nurses were burnt out, and administrative staff felt unheard. The hospital, despite its cutting-edge technology and world-class specialists, was losing its soul. Eleanor saw the symptoms: increased absenteeism, a spike in minor errors, a growing cynicism in the staff lounge. She knew the root cause was a profound disconnect, a breakdown in communication, a feeling among many that their voices didn't matter. She tried everything: new policies, mandatory team-building exercises, even bringing in external consultants. Nothing worked. The solutions felt superficial, failing to address the deep-seated issues. She walked through the gleaming corridors, her mind a perpetual whir of strategies and solutions, yet she felt increasingly adrift. The very people she relied on, the very heart of the hospital, were slipping away. Her own well-being was suffering too. The weight of leadership, coupled with the emotional toll of her demanding profession, left her feeling isolated and weary. She often found herself staring blankly at her office wall, the accolades and awards feeling hollow in the face of the growing despair around her. She was a leader who felt she was failing to lead, a healer who couldn't heal the sickness within her own institution. Her moments of quiet reflection were often interrupted by the rhythmic swish of Elias's mop, a sound she barely registered, a presence she seldom acknowledged. He was part of the background noise, a fixture in the periphery of her demanding world. She saw the blue uniform, not the man within it. She was too focused on the grand, overarching problems to notice the smaller, more insidious ones, or the quiet strength of the people who navigated them daily. Her frustration mounted with each failed attempt to mend the fractured spirit of her hospital. She was brilliant in the operating room, but outside of it, she felt blind, unable to pinpoint the exact malaise that gripped her institution. She yearned for a breakthrough, a fresh perspective, an unconventional solution. She was, in essence, waiting for someone to show her what she couldn't see, to illuminate the hidden truths that lay beneath the polished surface of her struggling hospital. Her journey, like Elias's, was one of eventual revelation, a slow dawning that the answers she sought were not in the complex algorithms of management theory, but in the simple, profound humanity that surrounded her, often in the most unexpected places. The stage was set for an unlikely collision of worlds, a chief surgeon and a cleaner, both seeking a form of healing, both unknowingly on a path that would intertwine their destinies and redefine their understanding of leadership, empathy, and the true meaning of worth. The antagonist in this unfolding drama wasn't a person, but a pervasive, insidious force. The hospital's entrenched bureaucracy and the suffocating culture of oversight personified by Mr. Davies, the head of facilities. Davies was a man who lived by the rulebook, a meticulous administrator whose world was a carefully constructed edifice of protocols, regulations, and cost-cutting measures. He saw the hospital not as a place of healing, but as a complex business, a series of spreadsheets and efficiency reports. For him, staff were cogs, easily replaceable, and certainly not to be indulged with emotional appeals or soft initiatives. His primary concern was the bottom line, and any deviation from established procedure was met with a stern, unyielding resistance. Davies viewed Elias, and indeed all cleaning staff, as interchangeable units, expenses to be minimized, silent figures whose only value was their ability to perform menial tasks without complaint. He saw their work as purely physical, devoid of intellectual or emotional contribution. He often made dismissive remarks about unskilled labor, believing that their lack of formal qualifications rendered their opinions irrelevant. He championed a rigid hierarchy, where authority flowed strictly from the top down, and any attempt by lower-level staff to voice concerns or offer suggestions was seen as an insubordinate challenge to his authority. He actively discouraged informal communication channels, preferring everything to go through official, documented procedures, which often created bottlenecks and stifled genuine feedback. Davies was the embodiment of the system that rendered people like Elias invisible. He reinforced the idea that value was solely determined by title, salary, and academic credentials. He was quick to point out any perceived flaw, any minor infraction, particularly from those he deemed beneath him. He believed in strict adherence to budgets, often at the expense of staff well-being or necessary resources. His office, stark and organized, reflected his personality. Devoid of warmth, focused solely on function. He saw emotional intelligence as a weakness, empathy as an inefficiency. When Eleanor first began her attempts to address the morale crisis, Davies was her primary obstacle. He dismissed her concerns as overly sentimental, arguing that staff just need to do their jobs, not be coddled. He actively undermined her efforts to create more inclusive communication channels, citing chain of command and security protocols, he was skeptical of any initiative that didn't have a clear, quantifiable return on investment, and he certainly wouldn't entertain the idea that a cleaner could possess any insight valuable to the hospital's strategic direction. His cynicism was a heavy blanket, smothering any flicker of innovation or genuine connection. He represented the institutional inertia, the resistance to change, the deeply ingrained prejudice against those deemed low status. He was the gatekeeper of the old ways, the protector of the rigid structure that stifled humanity. His presence was a constant reminder of the uphill battle Eleanor faced, and a direct threat to any possibility of Elias's hidden worth ever being acknowledged. Davies was not malicious in the dramatic sense, but rather a product of a system that valued efficiency over empathy, profit over people, and titles over talent. His antagonist role was subtle but profound, a quiet force that maintained the status quo, ensuring that the invisible remained invisible, and that the hierarchy remained unchallenged. The turning point, the subtle tremor that would eventually lead to an earthquake of change, began not in a boardroom, but in the quiet solitude of the late-night shifts. Eleanor, plagued by insomnia and the gnawing anxiety of her failing leadership, often found herself wandering the hospital corridors long after her official duties were done. One night, she witnessed a scene that, at first glance, seemed insignificant. A young, distraught intern, overwhelmed by a recent patient loss, sat hunched in a deserted waiting area, tears silently streaming down his face. He was alone, isolated in his grief. Then, a figure emerged from the shadows, Elias. He didn't approach immediately. He simply stopped his cleaning cart a respectful distance away. His eyes, usually downcast, now focused with a profound empathy on the young doctor. He didn't offer platitudes or professional advice. Instead, he quietly walked over, offered the intern a fresh, clean tissue from his pocket, and then, without a word, poured him a cup of lukewarm tea from a thermos he carried, placing it gently beside him. He then resumed his cleaning, but stayed within earshot, a silent, comforting presence. He didn't speak, he didn't intrude, but his actions spoke volumes. "I see your pain. You are not alone," Eleanor, hidden behind a pillar, watched the entire interaction. She saw the intern slowly lift his head, take a sip of the tea, and for the first time that night, a flicker of something other than despair crossed his face. It was a simple act, yet it resonated with a depth of human connection that Eleanor, in all her professional training, had rarely witnessed. It was a moment of profound, unsolicited kindness, a small beacon of light in the hospital's often cold, clinical environment. This wasn't the first time Elias had offered such quiet comfort. He had a knack for sensing distress, a silent radar for human suffering. He'd left a misplaced child's teddy bear on a grieving mother's bedside table, knowing she'd find solace in its return. He'd quietly offered a weary nurse a granola bar from his lunchbox when he noticed she'd skipped her break. He'd even, on one occasion, patiently listened to a confused elderly patient recount a long-lost memory, knowing that sometimes, just being heard was the most potent medicine. Eleanor began to notice him more. She started observing his interactions, not just with patients and staff, but with the hospital itself. She saw the way he meticulously cleaned the children's ward, leaving behind a small, hand-drawn smiley face on a whiteboard. She witnessed him patiently explain to a lost visitor how to find their way, his tone gentle and reassuring. She realized that Elias wasn't just cleaning surfaces. He was cleaning the emotional grime, the unseen residue of stress and sorrow that accumulated in the hospital's corners. She saw that he understood the human element of the hospital in a way she, despite her position, had somehow overlooked. He saw the hospital not as a collection of medical cases or a series of administrative tasks, but as a living, breathing entity, a community of people in their most vulnerable moments. This realization was a slow burn, a gradual chipping away at her professional detachment. It was unsettling, because it challenged her deeply held assumptions about where true value lay, about who held the answers to the hospital's systemic woes. She, the brilliant surgeon, the esteemed leader, was being shown a different kind of wisdom, a wisdom that emanated from the most unexpected source, a cleaner, a man she had until recently rendered invisible. The seeds of change were sown, not in a dramatic confrontation, but in the quiet, unassuming acts of a man who understood humanity better than any textbook could teach. Eleanor's curiosity, once piqued, quickly transformed into a focused investigation. She began to subtly observe Elias, not just his acts of kindness, but his overall demeanor and his interactions with the hospital environment. What she discovered was a man of extraordinary perception and quiet influence. She noticed that when Elias was on duty, the general atmosphere in certain wards seemed subtly calmer. Nurses appeared less stressed, patients seemed more at ease. She started cross-referencing this with feedback she'd been receiving, or rather, not receiving, from staff. Many complaints about minor issues, such as misplaced equipment or unaddressed spills, simply disappeared when Elias was working in that area. He anticipated needs before they were voiced. He'd notice a loose wheel on a gurney and discreetly report it, preventing a potential accident. He'd spot a forgotten patient chart and ensure it found its way back to the right department. He was, in essence, an unofficial, highly effective problem solver, a silent guardian of the hospital's operational flow. One day, Eleanor decided to test her hypothesis. She deliberately misplaced a crucial patient file in a less trafficked corridor, a file that was due for an urgent review. Within an hour, she received an anonymous note on her desk, meticulously detailing the file's location, along with a small, almost imperceptible smudge on the folder that only Elias would have noticed and cleaned. It was clear. He saw everything. The true revelation came during a particularly chaotic emergency. A complex multi-car pileup had overwhelmed the ER. Doctors and nurses were scrambling, resources were stretched thin, and the stress was palpable. Eleanor, overseeing the organized chaos, noticed Elias moving through the fray. He wasn't just cleaning up the inevitable spills. He was anticipating needs. He quietly restocked a depleted bandage cart, cleared a path for a gurney with surprising efficiency, and even, at one point, gently guided a confused family member to a quiet waiting room, offering them a bottle of water. He wasn't ordered to do any of this. He just did it instinctively with a profound understanding of the hospital's intricate demands and the human element at its core. He moved with a purpose, a silent ballet of support, making the impossible just a little bit more manageable for everyone around him. Later that week, Eleanor, still reeling from the emergency, saw Elias in the staff canteen, quietly eating his lunch. She approached him, a tentative smile on her face. "Elias," she began, her voice softer than usual. "I've been noticing things." Elias looked up, his eyes, usually averted, met hers briefly. A flicker of surprise, perhaps even apprehension, crossed his face. "Dr. Vance," he replied, his voice a low, gentle rumble she hadn't heard before. "Just doing my job." Eleanor shook her head. "No, Elias, you're doing more than that. You're seeing things. You're anticipating. You're helping in ways that go far beyond your job description." "How do you do it?" Elias hesitated, then looked down at his half-eaten sandwich. "When you spend enough time watching," he said, his voice barely a whisper, "you start to see the patterns, the unspoken needs, the places where the system bends or breaks. And when you care, you can't help but try to mend them, even in small ways." His words struck Eleanor with the force of a revelation. He articulated the very essence of what was missing in her leadership, in the hospital's culture. He saw the system, but he also saw the humanity within it. He didn't just clean the hospital. He understood its pulse, its vulnerabilities, its hidden strengths. It was a moment of profound clarity for Eleanor. The answers she sought weren't in complex data or management theories, but in the simple, profound wisdom of a man who had been invisible for too long. She realized that true leadership wasn't about imposing solutions from above, but about understanding the ground truth, about listening to the quiet voices, and about recognizing the invaluable contributions of every single person, regardless of their title. The catalyst had found her hidden gem, and the seeds of a radical transformation were about to blossom. Armed with this newfound understanding, Eleanor knew she had to act, but cautiously. She understood the deeply ingrained skepticism, particularly from figures like Mr. Davies. She couldn't simply announce that the hospital's salvation lay with its cleaner. She needed proof, a tangible demonstration of Elias's unique abilities, presented in a way that resonated with the data-driven, hierarchical culture of the hospital. Her first step was subtle. She began inviting Elias to informal, small group meetings. Initially disguised as operational efficiency reviews, she'd ask general questions about workflow, about common issues he observed, framing it as gathering input from all levels of staff. Elias, initially hesitant, slowly began to open up, offering observations that were surprisingly insightful. He spoke of the subtle bottlenecks in supply delivery, the ergonomic flaws in certain equipment that led to staff injuries, the simple changes in waste disposal routes that could save hours of staff time. His suggestions were always practical, grounded in direct experience, and often incredibly cost-effective. Eleanor meticulously documented every one of his insights, cross-referencing them with existing data. She found that many of his observations correlated with existing, unaddressed problems that had been costing the hospital time and money. His common-sense solutions often bypassed complex, expensive proposals from external consultants that had failed to grasp the nuances of the hospital's day-to-day operations. Next, she orchestrated a more direct yet still controlled demonstration. The hospital was grappling with a persistent issue of patient complaints regarding noise levels, particularly during night shifts. Previous attempts to mitigate this had been costly and ineffective. During a senior management meeting with Mr. Davies present, Eleanor presented the problem. Then, she casually mentioned, "I've had some interesting observations from our facilities team regarding this. Elias, perhaps you could share what you've noticed." Elias, dressed in his uniform, stood awkwardly at the back of the room, clearly uncomfortable being in the spotlight. But with Eleanor's encouraging gaze, he spoke. He didn't offer a grand solution. Instead, he calmly detailed the specific sources of noise. The squeak of old gurney wheels on a particular floor, the loud clatter of cleaning carts being pushed too fast, the echoing voices of staff congregating in specific areas, unaware of the sound amplification. He even suggested a simple, inexpensive solution, rubberizing the wheels of certain carts, creating quiet zones for staff conversations, and implementing a schedule for equipment maintenance based on sound levels. Davies scoffed. "And how much will this rubberizing cost, Dr. Vance? And are we to expect our cleaning staff to become acoustical engineers now?" Eleanor, however, had already done her homework. She presented a cost analysis, showing that Elias's suggestions were not only significantly cheaper than previous proposals, but also promised a higher success rate because they targeted the actual sources of the noise, not just its symptoms. The room fell silent. Even Davies, for a moment, seemed to lose his usual bluster. The simplicity, the directness, and the sheer practicality of Elias's suggestions were undeniable. It was a small victory, but a significant one. It forced the senior leadership to confront the uncomfortable truth that valuable insights could come from anywhere, and that their rigid hierarchy had been actively blinding them to potential solutions. This moment marked a crucial shift. Elias was no longer just the cleaner. He was Elias, a man with valuable insights, a quiet expert in the operational intricacies of the hospital. Eleanor had successfully begun to dismantle the wall of invisibility, piece by painstaking piece, allowing Elias's true worth to finally shine through. The path was still fraught with challenges, but the first decisive step had been taken, a bold challenge to the status quo, and a quiet triumph for the overlooked. The small victory in the noise reduction meeting was merely the first crack in the rigid edifice of the hospital's bureaucracy. Eleanor knew that to truly effect change, she needed to formalize Elias's role, not just as an informal advisor, but as an integral part of the decision-making process. This was a direct challenge to Mr. Davies and the deeply entrenched hierarchical system he represented. Eleanor proposed the creation of a new role, Operational Empathy Specialist, or Hospital Flow Coordinator. The title itself was a deliberate choice, blending the practical with the human. She argued that the hospital needed someone who understood the day-to-day realities from the ground up, someone who could identify pain points for both staff and patients that went unnoticed by management. She presented compelling data. Elias's insights had already led to a 15% reduction in minor equipment malfunctions, a 10% decrease in noise-related patient complaints, and an estimated cost saving of thousands of dollars in averted issues and streamlined processes. She emphasized the human impact, improved staff morale in areas where his suggestions had been implemented, and a subtle but noticeable increase in patient satisfaction scores in those same zones. Mr. Davies, predictably, was furious. He saw it as an affront to his authority, a dangerous precedent that would undermine proper management structure. He argued vehemently against it, citing Elias's lack of formal qualifications, his unprofessional background, and the absurdity of a cleaner advising senior staff. "This is an insult to our trained professionals, Dr. Vance," he fumed during a heated board meeting. "Are we to replace our administrators with janitors now?" Eleanor, however, stood firm. She presented a meticulously prepared case, highlighting not just Elias's practical contributions, but also his unique ability to foster a sense of community and empathy within the hospital. She argued that his unprofessional background was precisely what made him invaluable. He brought a perspective untouched by corporate jargon or academic theory, a perspective rooted in raw human experience. She drew parallels to other successful organizations that empowered frontline staff, citing examples of innovation born from unexpected sources. The board, initially swayed by Davies's traditional arguments, began to listen. The data was undeniable, and Eleanor's passion was infectious. She spoke not just of efficiency, but of the hospital's soul, of its moral imperative to care for its caregivers as much as its patients. She painted a picture of a hospital where every voice mattered, where every individual, regardless of their role, was seen as a vital contributor to the collective mission. The debate was intense, lasting for hours. Davies made one final, desperate attempt to discredit Elias, bringing up his lack of formal education as a disqualifying factor. But Eleanor countered with a powerful statement. "Education is vital, Mr. Davies, but so is wisdom. Elias possesses a wisdom of this hospital, a wisdom born of observation, empathy, and unwavering dedication that no degree can teach. We are not just hiring a cleaner. We are recognizing a leader, a visionary, who has been operating in the shadows in a surprising turn of events." The board voted in favor of Eleanor's proposal. It was a close call, a testament to the deep-seated resistance to change, but ultimately, the compelling evidence and Eleanor's unwavering advocacy prevailed. Elias was offered the new position. He accepted, with a quiet dignity that underscored the profound significance of the moment. His uniform, once a symbol of invisibility, was about to be replaced by a new identity, one that finally recognized his intrinsic worth. The hospital was on the cusp of a profound transformation, a testament to the power of seeing beyond titles and recognizing the extraordinary in the seemingly ordinary. The antagonist, Mr. Davies, was not removed, but his power was significantly diminished, his worldview challenged, and his rigid structure irrevocably cracked. The system had begun to bend, slowly but surely, towards a more human-centric future. Elias's transition into his new role as hospital flow coordinator was met with a mixture of skepticism, curiosity, and cautious optimism. Mr. Davies, though defeated in the board meeting, continued his passive-aggressive resistance, making veiled remarks about unqualified hires and experimentation. Some long-serving staff members, accustomed to the old hierarchy, found it difficult to adjust to the idea of taking advice from someone who had previously cleaned their offices. However, the majority, particularly the frontline staff nurses, junior doctors, and administrative assistants, welcomed the change with a quiet hope. They had seen Elias's quiet acts of kindness, experienced his intuitive understanding of their daily struggles, and recognized the genuine empathy he brought to his work. Elias, for his part, approached his new responsibilities with the same humility and meticulous dedication he applied to his cleaning duties. He didn't demand respect. He earned it one interaction at a time. He didn't issue directives from an office. He continued to walk the corridors, observing, listening, and engaging with staff at every level. His first major initiative was to establish ground truth sessions, informal, confidential meetings with staff from different departments, where they could voice their concerns, challenges, and suggestions without fear of reprisal. He listened intently, taking detailed notes, and then, in collaboration with Eleanor, began to implement small, actionable changes based on this direct feedback. He introduced a buddy system for new hires, pairing them with experienced staff, not just for training, but for emotional support during their challenging initial weeks. He designed a system for anonymous feedback on equipment malfunctions, leading to quicker repairs and safer working conditions. He even spearheaded a project to redesign the staff break rooms, making them more comfortable and conducive to genuine relaxation, a small but significant boost to morale. One of his most impactful contributions was a simple communication protocol he developed for interdepartmental transfers of patients. He had observed countless delays and frustrations caused by miscommunication between wards. His solution involved a streamlined digital checklist and a mandatory, brief verbal handover between two specific roles, ensuring all critical information was shared efficiently. This simple change drastically reduced transfer times and improved patient care coordination. Eleanor, watching his progress, was continually amazed. Elias didn't just solve problems, he understood the human impact of those problems. He didn't just implement policies, he fostered a culture of care and mutual respect. He was the empathetic bridge between the clinical and the human, the operational and the emotional. As the months passed, the positive changes became undeniable. Staff morale, once a critical issue, began to steadily improve. Absenteeism decreased, and the cynicism Eleanor had once observed slowly gave way to a renewed sense of purpose. Patient satisfaction scores saw a significant uptick, reflecting a hospital that felt more responsive, more human. Elias, once the invisible cleaner, was now a visible and respected leader, his quiet wisdom having transformed the very fabric of the institution. He didn't wear a white coat or carry a stethoscope, but his healing touch was felt throughout the hospital, a testament to the profound power of empathy and the extraordinary impact of a man who dared to see and be seen for his true worth. The hospital, once struggling, began to thrive, not just in its medical excellence, but in its humanity, a true glow-up for an institution that had forgotten its heart. The climax of Elias's journey, and the ultimate validation of Eleanor's faith, arrived during a critical hospital accreditation review. This was a high-stakes event, with a team of external evaluators scrutinizing every aspect of the hospital's operations, from patient care protocols to staff morale. A negative review could have severe financial and reputational consequences. Mr. Davies, seeing this as his last chance to assert his authority and discredit Eleanor's unconventional leadership, had been subtly undermining Elias's initiatives, hoping they would be exposed as unprofessional during the review. During the evaluators' visit, they conducted extensive interviews with staff across all departments. Many staff members, empowered by Elias's ground truth sessions, spoke openly and honestly about their experiences, both positive and negative. Crucially, they repeatedly cited Elias's initiatives as key factors in improving their working conditions and overall job satisfaction. One morning, the lead evaluator, a stern-faced woman known for her uncompromising standards, called a special meeting. "Dr. Vance," she began, "we've been hearing a lot about this hospital flow coordinator role. It's highly unorthodox. We'd like to understand its impact directly. Could Mr. Elias speak to us about his contributions?" Eleanor, though expecting this, felt a surge of apprehension. This was it, the moment of truth. Elias, who had been quietly observing the review from a distance, was called forward. He stood before the panel, still dressed in a simple, but now clean and pressed, shirt and trousers, a subtle shift from his blue uniform, symbolizing his new status. Mr. Davies watched from the back, a smirk playing on his lips, anticipating Elias's stumble. Elias, however, didn't stumble. He spoke with a quiet confidence that belied his humble background. He didn't use corporate jargon or boast about achievements. Instead, he spoke about the hospital as a living organism, about the interconnectedness of every role, about the importance of listening to the quiet voices. He shared specific examples of how his initiatives, born from direct observation and staff feedback, had improved patient safety, reduced wait times, and fostered a greater sense of community among staff. He spoke about the buddy system with genuine warmth, about the redesigned break rooms with a touch of pride, and about the communication protocols with a clear, logical explanation of their benefits. He didn't just present data. He presented stories of nurses feeling less burnt out, of patients receiving better care, of doctors feeling more supported. He articulated the why behind every change, connecting it back to the core mission of healing and care. He even subtly addressed Davies's earlier criticisms without naming him, by emphasizing that true efficiency comes from understanding human needs, not just adhering to rigid rules. The evaluators listened intently. They asked probing questions, and Elias answered each one with a thoughtful, empathetic response, drawing on his years of silent observation. He demonstrated an encyclopedic knowledge of the hospital's operations, a deep understanding of its challenges, and a clear vision for its future. By the end of his presentation, the lead evaluator's stern expression had softened. She thanked him warmly. A few days later, the hospital received its accreditation. The review report specifically highlighted the innovative and highly effective role of the hospital flow coordinator as a model for other institutions. It praised the hospital's exemplary commitment to staff well-being and patient-centered care, fostered by a unique bottom-up approach to operational improvement. Mr. Davies, defeated and humbled, was later transferred to a less influential administrative role. Eleanor, her leadership vindicated, stood proudly beside Elias, who, despite the accolades, remained the same humble, empathetic man. The hospital had undergone a profound glow-up, not just in its operations, but in its very soul, proving that true worth and visionary leadership can indeed emerge from the most unexpected places. In the quiet aftermath of the accreditation, the hospital experienced a profound and lasting transformation. Elias, now a respected and integral part of the senior leadership team, continued to champion the voices of the often overlooked. His ground truth sessions became a permanent fixture, evolving into a powerful platform for continuous improvement and staff empowerment. He collaborated with Eleanor to implement a Culture of Care initiative, which focused on fostering empathy, open communication, and mutual respect across all departments. This included mandatory empathy training for all new hires, a mentorship program that paired senior staff with junior colleagues, and a formal recognition system for acts of kindness and exceptional teamwork, not just medical achievements. The hospital's physical environment also saw changes. Inspired by Elias's holistic approach, Eleanor allocated funds for better staff facilities, greener spaces for patient recovery, and improved signage that prioritized clarity and accessibility. The sterile corridors began to feel a little warmer, a little more human. Staff morale soared. The cynicism that had once plagued the institution was replaced by a palpable sense of community and shared purpose. Employees felt heard, valued, and respected, leading to reduced turnover, increased productivity, and a renewed passion for their work. Patients, in turn, benefited from a more compassionate and efficient healthcare experience. The hospital became a beacon of patient-centered care, its reputation growing not just for medical excellence, but for its unique, humanistic approach. Eleanor Vance, the brilliant surgeon, found her own leadership transformed. She had learned to lead not just with intellect, but with empathy, to look beyond titles and to recognize the inherent value in every individual. She became a passionate advocate for inclusive leadership, often sharing Elias's story as a testament to the power of unconventional wisdom. Elias, despite his newfound recognition, remained grounded. He still walked the corridors, still greeted every staff member by name, and still had a quiet word of comfort for a distressed patient or a weary nurse. He understood that true leadership wasn't about power or prestige, but about service, about making a genuine difference in the lives of others. His journey from invisible cleaner to indispensable leader became a legend within the hospital, a powerful reminder that worth is not defined by status, but by character, integrity, and the capacity for profound human connection. The hospital's glow-up was complete, not just a superficial change, but a deep, systemic shift towards a more humane and effective institution. It was a testament to the idea that sometimes The most profound wisdom comes from those who have been given the least opportunity to speak, and that true vision can often be found in the most unexpected corners. The transformation of the hospital, spurred by Elias's quiet wisdom and Eleanor's courageous leadership, resonated far beyond its walls. Elias became a reluctant but powerful public speaker, invited to medical conferences and leadership seminars to share his unique perspective on operational empathy and grassroots innovation. His story, once a whispered secret within the hospital, became an inspiring case study, challenging traditional notions of leadership and organizational structure. He authored a small, impactful book, The Invisible Hand: How Seeing Everyone Transforms Everything, which became a surprising bestseller in healthcare management circles. The book, written in his simple, direct style, eloquently articulated his philosophy that true efficiency and excellence stem from a deep understanding of human needs and the empowerment of every individual within an organization, regardless of their role. Eleanor, now a celebrated figure in healthcare leadership, continued to advocate for the principles she had learned from Elias. She established the Elias Initiative, a national program aimed at identifying and nurturing hidden talent within healthcare institutions, providing pathways for frontline staff to contribute to strategic decision-making. The program funded training, mentorship, and opportunities for staff in invisible roles to develop their skills and share their insights. The Elias Initiative became a powerful force for change, fostering a new generation of leaders who understood the profound importance of empathy and inclusivity. Other hospitals, inspired by their success, began to reevaluate their own hierarchies, implementing similar programs and recognizing the untapped potential within their own invisible workforces. The impact was systemic. The healthcare industry, often criticized for its cold, clinical approach, began to shift towards a more human-centered model. Patient care improved not just medically but emotionally. Staff burnout decreased, and a renewed sense of purpose invigorated the sector. Elias, despite all the accolades, maintained his humility. He still occasionally walked the hospital corridors late at night, not with a mop, but with a notepad, observing, listening, and offering quiet words of encouragement. He knew that the fight for visibility and recognition was ongoing, and he remained a steadfast advocate for those who, like him, had once been overlooked. He often ended his talks with a simple, yet profound message: every single person has value. Every single person has a story. Our job, as leaders, as human beings, is to listen to those stories, to see that value, and to create a world where no one is invisible. The hospital, once a symbol of a broken system, became a shining example of what was possible when an institution dared to see beyond the surface, to recognize the extraordinary in the ordinary, and to allow the true worth of every individual to illuminate the path forward. It was a legacy of empathy, a testament to the power of a single, unassuming man to spark a revolution of care. And so, the story of Elias, the invisible cleaner who became a beacon of change, concludes. His journey reminds us that true worth is not defined by titles, salaries, or academic accolades, but by character, empathy, and the profound impact we have on the lives of others. It teaches us that wisdom can emerge from the most unexpected places, and that often, the answers to our greatest challenges lie hidden in plain sight, waiting for someone to simply open their eyes and truly see. Elias's transformation, and the subsequent glow-up of the entire hospital, is a powerful testament to the idea that every single person holds untapped potential, a unique perspective, and an invaluable contribution to make. It's a call to action for all of us to challenge our own preconceived notions, to look beyond the superficial, and to recognize the extraordinary humanity that resides within every individual, regardless of their role or status. His story isn't just about a cleaner. It's about the countless unsung heroes in every walk of life who quietly contribute, who observe, who care, and whose voices deserve to be heard. It's about the courage of a leader who dared to listen, to take an unconventional risk, and to build a better world by empowering those who had long been overlooked. This story is a mirror, reflecting our own potential to be both the Elias and the Eleanor in our own lives, to recognize our own intrinsic worth, and to be the catalyst for positive change in the lives of others. So, I ask you, who are the invisible people in your own life, in your workplace, in your community? What hidden wisdom might they possess? What profound insights are we missing by not truly seeing them, by not truly listening? What if the solutions to our biggest problems are not in the grand pronouncements of the powerful, but in the quiet observations of the unassuming? What if the greatest glow-up we can achieve individually and collectively is to finally create a world where no one feels invisible? Share the story, comment below, and most importantly, take a moment today to truly see someone who might feel overlooked. Remind someone that their worth is inherent, not conditional. Because sometimes the most revolutionary act is simply to acknowledge another human being, to validate their existence, and to empower them to shine.